Hi, so I have the good fortune of getting to work for the California Native Plant Society, and I just wanted to put a plug in there. And it's also, I wanted to make sure that I make it clear that throughout this talk I'll probably say we, and by that I mean we, the big community of which CNPS is one leader. I don't mean we that I had anything to do with it. It's kind of the opposite of the royal we. It's everyone except me. So it's everyone in this room and generations of scientists and activists and the big global we. And I think that that's, it's just something I want to make clear, and I think it's also something that's really cool. And so CNPS is a statewide nonprofit, 35 chapters in Baja California and California, 1,000 volunteers out there doing events like this and really making the change that I'm going to talk about here today. All right, good. And so before I get started, so most of my talk is going to really focus on change, and we're definitely in a time of change. And it seems crazy fast and seems to be accelerating. And so I just wanted to provide some context to this and honor the fact that we're on Women Miwok land, and to show kind of some of the change that's just happened in just the last few years. In 1850, there were very few immigrants in California, in Marin. This is in Marin County. And in 2020, it's really the reverse. There's a lot of immigrants here. And this has been a tremendous change. And you can see it anywhere you look, any way you look, you're going to see this. This is the population of Marin County from 1850 to 2018. The 2018 is an estimate, pulled out of the Census Bureau numbers. And just to give it some perspective, you can see I've put some stars in here. The bottommost star, that red star, is when they completed the Library of Congress in 1897. The next star, the green star, is when my friend Jake Sig was born, Montana Sheep Farm in 1927. He's celebrating his 93rd birthday this June. He moved to California basically the day that World War II ended. He was the luckiest person to serve in World War II. He got off the train, went to San Francisco, and they said the war's over. So, that gold star there is when CNPS was formed. 1965, the California Native Plant Society was formed. And then that blue star is when I met Jake Sig in San Francisco, and he turned me on to CNPS. So this is just one little arc of change, and you can see it right there. And one context is, this is Jake's life. He was born on a Montana sheep farm. He probably didn't see a car until he got off the train in San Francisco. And he has seen this change, and all of us have seen this change. And I wonder, this is incredible. This logarithmic curve, maybe I'm putting it upside down. Yeah, there you go. This logarithmic curve of exponential population growth is really something. That is change. What we're going to be doing over the next few decades is important, and it's exciting, and it's going to happen fast. But it is comparable to what we have all been through. And I bet there's people in this room who've seen this. So how many people saw this? Okay, so change. Now I'm going back. And so, as I said, you can see it in many different ways. This is a map of population density in California. And really, a lot of the threats to biodiversity in California correlate with population density. Population is not necessarily the problem. I'd be okay with a few fewer people, but it's really how we live that has the greatest impact. We can have more humans, but we can't have more humans spread out like mold on a petri dish, eating everything up the way we are. And so, just to put that out there, but they do, at this point in time, the threats that I'm going to talk about do correlate with population density. Sorry. And so, the most important threat to biodiversity on planet Earth, in California, in Marin, North America, any scale you're talking about, is habitat loss due to development. This is a painting I found in a junk shop in San Francisco 10 years ago, back when there were junk shops in San Francisco. And on the back of it was written, Poppies on Mount Tam, 1934. So 4 years before the Golden Gate Bridge was built, someone came across and made a painting of these poppies. And this is a photo I took of the same site in 2005. So this is habitat loss due to development. And when we take habitat for our own uses, we displace those creatures that were there before. This is the greatest threat to biodiversity. This is the second greatest threat, impact of biological invasions. This is Laguna Niguel Regional Park in Orange County in 2014. And I want you to take a close look at all these beautiful oak trees out in there. You can imagine a well is sitting under them while the kids are playing soccer and the whole deal. And this is 2 years later after prolific shot borer beetle had swept through and wiped it out. And everywhere that there was an oak tree, there's now a brown spot and a stump. And so this is biological invasions are the second greatest threat to biodiversity at whatever scale you're talking. And then the third greatest threat is pollution. And we can talk about a lot of different kinds of pollution. Acid rain is not so much a problem for us anymore. Now we're much more concerned about, again, about pesticides. So pesticides, pervasive pesticides in our environment, as a scientist, I have to admit that it does look like they are having very significant effects. And that the buzzword for that effect is the insect apocalypse and the loss of monarchs and the decline of pollinators and everything else. And so even just focusing on one class of pesticide, neonics, is still a tremendous threat to biodiversity. And then we've got other forms of pollution, which are also having big effects, some of them secondary. For example, the pollution, the emission of greenhouse gases is increasing the climate, melting glaciers, and raising sea level. And we're going to see tremendous changes along our shorelines. A lot of really important biodiversity hotspots are going to get inundated by rising seas. And this is something that we and our children and our grandchildren, and for as long as there's humans on the planet, are going to be dealing with this. And then, of course, increased wildfire intensity, frequency, everything else is tied to the climate change that comes from greenhouse gas pollution. It's also tied to other things, such as building homes out in places where our ancestors never would have, and that kind of stuff. So these are the threats that we're facing. Just so you know, this is the downer section, and now we're going to get into some better things. So right now we are making choices, and it's really interesting that we are at a time of change. We are quite deliberately making choices about how we want to live on this world and what we want to enjoy and how we want to do it. We're deciding whether we want to live in a landscape that looks like this or that looks like this. We're literally deciding parcel by parcel whether we will build stuff on it or save it as part of our biodiversity conservation portfolio to protect clean water and pollinators and everything else. We're deciding whether our front yards are going to look like this. So this is walking past a yard in Berkeley. I'm sorry if it's your house, but my kid ran out and said, "This is the worst yard in the world." And it was on a hot day, and that was like, the surface of a mirror. And on that day, it was the worst yard in the world. So we're deciding whether our yards are going to look like that or they're going to look like this. Yay. Yeah, right? And we're deciding, well, we're not deciding, we already decided. It is the law of the land that California will be carbon neutral. We will have zero net emissions by the year 2045. And yeah, right? And we will be 100% renewable energy by 2045. We've made those decisions, that's the law. Now we need to decide how we're going to do it. We're going to make some tough decisions. Are we going to use places like Carrizo Plain? Are we going to use it to meet our target of 100% renewable energy and cover it with solar panels? Or are we going to use it to meet our target of zero net emissions and manage lands to sequester carbon? So we're making these decisions day by day. We're deciding, now that we realize that fire actually exists and it's a function of thermodynamics, not of politics, we're deciding how we're going to live with fire. Are we going to live with it by bulldozing hillsides, planting ice plant, and still letting our home burn? Because even those palm trees, even those bushes are less flammable than something built out of trees that have been dead for 50 years. Are we going to live with fire in this kind of way, very expensive and harmful? Or are we going to live in fire in a more natural way that is a lot more cost effective and has additional benefits? So these are the choices that we're making today. Here in Marin, you guys made these choices a few years ago. I used to work for Audubon Canyon Ranch, and this is one of the political flyers that Audubon Canyon Ranchers put out in the heyday of turning Marin from the most pro-development county in California to the most pro-environment county in California. And they said, you've got the choice, what do you want? And it worked here, it saved Marin. And now we're doing it everywhere else. And we all know what the right choice is. We have, in this room, we are the choir. We've been trying to convince other people. And they've caught up with us. And now they're marching in the street demanding the kinds of actions that we've been pushing for years. And so it's really an exciting time right now here in California to actually take action on some of the ideals and the win-win actions that we have all been saying, why don't we just do the right thing? And now people are out in the streets demanding that their legislators do. And the legislators are excited for the opportunity, for the most part, especially in California. They want their voters to force them to do the right stuff. They want, the excuse to go and save the world. And so I'm going to talk about some of what we're doing as a consequence of the choices that we're making. So right now we are literally planning a new California. We've got large-scale regional plans, 30 million acres here, 26 million acres there, 5 million acres there. We're deciding where we're going to put housing, where we're going to put transportation. We're making these plans really fast. And they're people of goodwill, good intent, sitting down together with whatever data they have, and it's not enough. It's not comprehensive data, making the best decisions that we can as fast as we can, because this train is leaving the station. We're deciding that we're going to manage it, we've decided that we're going to manage our forests for multiple positive benefits. We're going to manage them, in some cases, for fire protection, but really the forests aren't the problem with fire. It's the tree that's leaning on your roof that's the fire problem. We're going to manage our forests for carbon sequestration, for forest health, for biodiversity protection, for watershed protection. All of those things are the same thing. We manage our forests in the same way to accomplish all of those things, and to sequester carbon. We're going to replant oak trees. We're going to re-oak California. Yes, to sequester carbon. You know, a 60,000-pound oak tree is pulling a lot of carbon out of the atmosphere. You know, something like 60,000 pounds. And it's also providing wildlife habitat and water infiltration and bringing water up in the dry of the summer and providing a place for your kids to have rope swings. So we're going to re-oak California. We're going to reverse the trend of losing oaks. And we've got laws. We are actually developing ambitious state policy to make biodiversity one of the core priorities of the state of California. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing with the ambitious new California Biodiversity Initiative, which was kicked off by Governor Jerry Brown, and now is really getting carried by this new administration and a lot of really great appointees that the Governor Newsom has put into power, and they don't have power, but they got responsibility, and they're on board. They're good partners, and so the Biodiversity Initiative basically makes it. We had an executive order that declared that all agencies of the state of California shall work to protect biodiversity, and that they'll be coordinated by the Department of Food and Ag and the Department of Resources and agencies. And within that, we've outlined some, there is a roadmap, a very broad 30,000-foot overview kind of things that we need to do. And I'm going to list a few of those. First, we need to figure out what we have here in California. We don't know what biodiversity we have in California. So we are going to map all of California's vegetation communities, and we're going to map all of California's rare plants. We don't know where they are right now. And that's just insane for a place with 40 million smart people, the 5th largest economy on the planet. It's big. It is a global biodiversity hotspot, one of 35, ranks up there with the Amazon basin and Indonesia and the Western Ghats in India. But we have the ability to figure out what we have. And so the initiative, the roadmap says that we shall try to do that. Because it's so big, we need a lot of help. And so we're going to involve the community in this. We're going to involve all Californians. Everyone gets a chance to be a part of it. Doing things like, specifically, the roadmap calls out CNPS rare plant treasure hunts, where we train people to become parabotanists to be able to recognize a few rare plants, go out and find them. In 4 years, we found 2,500 populations of rare plants. A third of those were new. So this is part of what we're going to do to save biodiversity. And then we're going to literally save biodiversity. We're going to seed bank all of the rare plants of the most biodiverse state of the Union, of California. We're going to collect seeds from all of our rare plants and put them in cold storage as a hedge against extinction. We still need to save them out in their habitat, but we're going to have this backup. And I know that we're going to do this because we just got the funding for it. In last year's budget, we lobbied. Well, it turns out it was easy. There's not a big lobby to oppose people collecting rare plants. And every legislator we've been, not every legislator, but we would meet with legislators and try and pitch it. And, okay, there's an existing network of research institutions and universities and nonprofits and botanic gardens. They're already collecting the seeds. We have a system. We're halfway through the flora. We just need some money in the gas tank. Okay, well, how much do you need? $2 million. What? That's nothing. So they gave us 3.6. And the team is out there right now, and by us, again, this is the opposite of the royal we. There's dozens of teams out there from institutions across California collecting rare plant seeds. We're going to get 100%, but importantly, we're going to get 75% of our rare plants seed banked by October of 2020, when the world meets in China to re-examine the Convention on Biological Diversity, a treaty that every member nation has signed except for one. And that has a set of targets. One of those targets is 75% of your seeds seed banked. So we're going to bring, when the world goes there prepared to compromise, California is going to come with a really nice report card and do what California does, wave it in people's faces. Hopefully sign on behalf of the United States onto the treaty. So there is strategy to some of this that has the potential to really have leverage beyond just saving one of planet Earth's 35 biodiversity hotspots. We are going to pull the data that we collect, we're going to pull it together, give it to some really smart computers to model and identify our important plant areas. Every part of California will get a rank, and those that, where you have a cluster of high ranks, that's an important plant area. And we will be able to say, we'll be able to take this to those planning meetings where you're drawing lines on the map of California saying, this is housing, this is carbon storage, this is biodiversity protection. We'll be able to bring our sites in and say, this is biodiversity protection. And work to actually save them. Yeah. I can't say as much as I want because I only have a half hour. So I need to keep going. But happy to talk to you more about it. There's definitely more to be said on all of these things. And then, also within the roadmap and within all of our hearts, we're going to rebuild the landscapes that we live in. We're gonna restore nature one garden at a time. We're going to do a habitat revolution that seizes the opportunity to replace these kinds of landscapes. This is downtown San Francisco, love it. That's Audubon Canyon Ranch, if anyone knows. With landscapes like this, that provide habitat for the pollinators that we're losing, that help to reverse the insect apocalypse, provide habitat for birds, reduce water consumption, reduce chemical consumption and landfill waste, and just really importantly, give a chance for people to reconnect with nature and recharge in a way that we all really need. And so this is all part of what we're doing for the Biodiversity Initiative. It's stuff that we've been doing for years, and we're scaling it up now. We are told by the state of California that we have to do this. And so it's an exciting time, and we need money to hire staff, and we need brilliant people to hire, because the opportunity is here now. And then we're also looking at doing some other things that are, actually even more ambitious. And this is something I'm working on, not now, but in an hour. It's hot and heavy. We're looking at doing a survey of the biodiversity of California. California has 25% of the plants north of Mexico. It's got more plants than any other state. It's got more rare plants than most states have plants. And yet it's fairly unexplored. And anytime you go out there and look at a place, you find new populations, you find new species. We need to know what we have, so we know which areas are most important to protect and which areas we don't have to fight over. We need those data right now. We've got smart computers that can draw maps, but the data they're using were collected in the early 1900s by men wearing natural fibers. We can do better today with the technology that we have. And basically they were the last push. Since then we have defunded the fundamental infrastructure of biodiversity science. We've shut down museums, we've stopped training students, we have defunded that which is core to understanding our biodiversity. And so we're going to reverse that. We're going to do a survey of the biodiversity of California, of the whole state of California. And there's a lot of different strategies and parts and plans. One is to get money in the upcoming resilience bond to rebuild those collections, to rebuild the infrastructure. Bonds build buildings. And this is one of those rare cases where we need to build buildings. We need to upgrade the facilities that have been rotting away and being defunded for decades, and we need to build some new ones. There's a lot more to it. We also need to train more people because there just aren't enough biodiversity scientists to get the job done. And everyone in California deserves a chance to be part of this. It's interesting work, it's fun work, it's good work. And so this is a project that, to people like me, it looks like a chance to collect the data that we urgently need and a chance to collect the specimens while we still can, because no matter what we do, we are going to lose populations. And each of those populations is priceless, is part of the most valuable thing on planet Earth, the codes for how to live in a place. And that DNA, those sequences, those specimens, are stuff that our descendants are going to be, they will value nothing more than that. As they're trying to find a sequence that provides resistance to this disease or to that fungus or survival in this drought, as the climate changes, they're going to want those specimens. So we need to secure those specimens as part of the survey. To the rest of the world, this will look like a jobs program, like a works project administration, because we need to train a lot of parataxonomists. We need to bring a lot of people into the system and train people to flip logs and vacuum up beetles, or sort those beetles into piles of things that look somewhat different, or run the beetles under a camera so that the AI can do further sorting, or actually be taxonomists and do the alpha taxonomy and describe those new species of beetles. And those people will look different from the taxonomists we have today. Taxonomists we have today are mostly old white men who can't ID the stuff because their eyesight is gone. And this is what happens at the end of this decades of starvation. We've starved the system. And this is our opportunity to build a new system. It has to happen. We know that California of the future will look very different from today. and we have no other strategy for making sure that the conservation biologists of tomorrow are the people who are, are in California today. And this is a good one. It gets, does multiple things. And it's also, there's also, in addition to just the logistics of it, there's a responsibility. Because conservation and saving nature and biodiversity work is good work. As volunteers, as paid people, whatever you're doing, it feels really good. And this is an era where, we are all just too disconnected from nature. And it's not just that this good, decently paid work should be available to everyone, and it's not. And it's also that, the health benefits that you get from this, as opposed to, other jobs that I don't want to denigrate. But there are health benefits to doing this kind of work, and they aren't just the physical health benefits of being outside sometimes, but the mental health benefits of being part of something that is really good, that is saving your brother and sister creatures, that you can go to a cocktail party and not apologize for what you do. I'm thinking of the lawyer I talked to yesterday who works for a German company we're suing right now. So it's like, oh man, what a bummer for that to be your life. And so this is what we're doing overall. And I'm not sure how much time I have, but I have just another 3 minutes of slides, I think. Okay, good. Cool. And this is all really ambitious, and again, kind of getting back to the theme of change. We're in an era, we are leaving an era where stuff like this would have been received like, oh yeah, nice dream, but that could never happen. But we're in a new era where this is happening. We are doing this, and we're accelerating. We're not doing it at the pace that we need to, or at the pace that we will. But we're doing it, and I also just want to put it back into the context of the change that we've all seen. When you look around this world, when as we move through a landscape that is paved, that is farmed, that is built, that has people poking at smartphones and cars driving themselves, the world has changed a lot in just a very short time. And it will continue to change at least that pace. And it doesn't all have to get worse all the time. And I really think that the future can look a lot better than today. We will lose a lot of things that we love. There will be tragedies. But we can also steer it. And we've got some good successes. We can also look at the past era of change and view it as a success. And this is, the first CNPS plant sale. When this new organization needed some money to do what it needed to do, there was, what are we going to do? How are we going to get money? Well, we could have a bake sale. Well, I've got some plants growing in pots in my backyard. Well, I do too. Why don't we have a plant sale? Sold out within an hour and became a CNPS thing, a CNPS tradition. It is the way that chapters fund themselves. It's the way that chapters get the resources that they need to give students scholarships, to hold events like this, to do all of the good work that chapters do. Plant sales are the fundamental engine for that. And they're also the engine to bringing in new CNPSers and to educating people and kind of, in being ambassadorial, evangelical. They are, where we connect with the public and then send people home with plants so they can talk to their neighbors and spread the gospel. And so that is a fundamental success that has built an organization that gets to be in the game on this important time. We've also succeeded at saving North America's largest flora. We have 25% of the plants that occur north of Mexico. We're a biodiversity hotspot. As you see this column on the left, that is the California flora. That's North Dakota. So California's got more plant types than any other state in the union. This other red bar, that's the rare plants of California. About a third of our plants are rare. Also, about a third of them occur nowhere else on planet Earth. We've got more rare plants than 33 states. We've got more rare plants than 33 states have. We're like the Michael Bloomberg of plants. So, I don't need to get too political here. But, and we have saved it with so much to lose. And when you look out at what we've done to the state in just a few decades, you would think that we'd have lost so much of that. We've only lost something like 20 species. And when we go out and look, quite often we find those things again. And some of them still persist in herbarium sheets because people in the past were smart enough to go out and collect specimens. And we can not just go and get the DNA off of those specimens, but we can get living seeds off of those sheets. So even where you would expect the greatest tragedy of extinction in the California flora, it's a success because we have done the science, we've identified which plants are likely to go extinct, we ranked them, we developed a ranking system, we put it into the law so that those plants have protections, and we've sued people over them, and mostly people have just avoided projects where they know they're going to get sued over a rare plant. And scientists have gone out and we've saved them, and we've saved North America's largest flora. We've also saved 50% of North America's most expensive real estate. Half of our land is publicly protected land, 50%. You know, a lot of this is federal land. Most of it is not managed as well as we would like, but Californians have come together to save this. This wasn't just a few cranky characters saying you should save that land. When you save 50% of land, that's an indicator that the society cares about it. And I think these are successes that we don't talk about enough that give us some inspiration for how we can succeed going forward. And then there's other inspirations. So, you know, my good friends and colleagues will do climate modeling to try and figure out where plants will be in the future, or birds, or anything else. And they'll take Maxent, the software that you use, pull it out of the box, use the default settings, put in some data from wherever. It doesn't matter, it's just data, even though the data are all totally wrong. And then, you know, the output says, you know, and then you put in some climate models of how we expect climate to look in the future, which of course no one has a clue how it's going to look. And you can't model the variability that is what these organisms feel. They feel that wet year, they feel that summer that was just a little bit too dry for just one day too long. You just can't model these things. And then the output says, redwoods will be extinct in the future, and actually they're extinct now. And you know, and then you make policy decisions on this, and you go give talks, and people get freaked out. My take home on this is that we don't know these organisms. We have no idea what's going to go on. You can't know I don't believe any of us really know ourselves or our wives and husbands, and we're not going to know these living creatures, which are incredibly diverse, and not even one species. Often when you look at it, you'll be like, oh, that's not a species, that's 12, and they're not actually related. And so take it with a grain of salt. Bulldozers are still the #1 enemy. So if you bulldoze it, there's a good chance it's going to go extinct. But these things have a resilience against climate change that gives us a lot of opportunity to save them. And so this little redwood seedling, I think it might be the only redwood seedling, the only patch of redwood seedlings I've ever seen in my life. Having worked in redwoods for 10 years, you never see redwood seedlings. That's growing across the street from a redwood tree in Sacramento, down the street from the CPS office, half a block, in a bed of simulated redwood understory, in a planter box in Sacramento where redwoods don't occur naturally. But we've got a lot of really big, beautiful redwoods living off groundwater. And they're not as happy as they would be in, you know, southern Oregon. But in 500 years, there might be a decade that feels like southern Oregon, and they might proliferate more. And all I know is that they're proliferating now, just with, like, you know, the overwatering that people do of their ornamental shrubberies. And so there is a lot of reason for hope. Not complacency, but we can do anything, and if we put our shoulders to this, we can do this. And I just want to, you know, this is what this chunk of Audubon Canyon Range looked like 1 million years ago. And that's what it's going to look like 1 million years from now. This, you know, life will proliferate. It will, you know, it will recover the land, new forms will evolve. So long as we don't Venus the place, that's the arc of life. And the only question is, what do we get to experience of it? And I think all of us in this room would rather experience this kind of landscape than, you know, than the default. And I just want to end with, you know, the blue marble picture. Future generations will look and go, oh my God, they had a lot of ice. But it'll still be a good planet. And really, this is the prize. As we talk about doing these things, we talk about saving life on planet Earth. We talk about saving the only life that we know to exist in the universe. And we need to keep that in mind and be willing to sacrifice some parking spaces, or sacrifice a little bit of density downtown, or make some little personal sacrifices like that in order to save this. Because it's not about winning an argument with a neighbor or someone on the other side of the political fence. This is what it's about. That's what I'm looking for anyway. So love to connect with you, get in touch.